It's time for Elder Law Matters Radio. Elder law issues can be overwhelming and complicated for families to deal with. Elder Law Matters will demystify all areas of elder law and estate planning through conversation, interviews, and case studies. Each week, partner Melissa Negrin-Weiner will walk you through the twists and turns of planning for your future or caring for an aged loved one. If you want to protect yourself and your family and preserve your assets, or if you're a caregiver for an aged loved one, then Elder Law Matters Radio is for you. Now it's time for Elder Law Matters Radio with your host, Melissa Negrin-Weiner.
Hello, everyone. This is Melissa Negrin-Weiner, partner with Genser, Cona, Elder Law and Estate Planning Attorneys in Melville. You can visit us at genserlaw.com. Today, we will be speaking with our guest, Marcus O'Toole-Jello. He's a senior associate here at Genser, Cona, Elder Law. And, of course, as always, at the end of the show, we will hear from our managing partner, Jennifer Cona. Some items in the news this week, very interesting things about wills and estates. When we see people who are in the public eye, people who are superstars who pass away with millions and millions of dollars, and we find out that they never had a will in place. Like Prince, for example, as we all know, passed away and did not have a will, and he had an estate worth millions of dollars. So that's old news, but what's new this time is that his sister, who is one of the beneficiaries of his estate, has essentially sold a portion of her inheritance to a third party. And there's a lot of discussion now in the courts about whether or not this third party corporation has any right to information about Prince's estate. And what's interesting is a bank is actually in charge of the estate instead of an individual. So instead of there being a family member who was appointed as the executor of the estate, there's a bank in charge. So very removed from the situation, but overseeing the estate. And the court has given the family members, the beneficiaries here, a lot of leeway in this situation, allowing them to get a lot of information about the estate, which isn't necessarily typical. So because of that, there's a lot of question and concern about this kind of third-party organization being able to be treated the same way as the other beneficiaries and get this information. So while in itself doesn't really affect all of you listeners out there, what it does is it shows us how important it is to make sure that we have a will in place. Because, like I said, there's a bank in charge of this estate, where if you prepare a will, you can name who's in charge of your estate, who handles getting the assets out to the beneficiaries, making sure everybody gets what they're supposed to get. It's really important to make sure you have that will, and it's for a host of reasons. There was a story years ago that I often talk about when I give presentations, where a young woman who lived with her mother and was never married and never had children did not have a will. And in New York, if you pass away without a will, your assets will first go to your parents if they're living. And in this particular case, the elderly woman was on Medicaid. So when her daughter predeceased her, all of the daughter's assets then went to mom, and not only did it throw her off Medicaid, but a lot of the money had to go back to Medicaid to pay back the program. These are nightmare situations that unless you are working with someone who really knows the ins and outs of the system, you could end up with a major problem. But just another reason why having a will, if that young woman had a will, she probably would have left her assets elsewhere, or if she was going to leave them to her mother, leave them in such a way that they would be protected from the government benefits, from having to pay back the government benefits. So, Prince is just kind of one of many of these famous people who shed light and kind of bring this to the forefront about how important it is to have a last will and testament in place, regardless of your financial situation. Another issue that comes up and we see all the time is young couples with young children. Everybody needs to have a will. if you have young children, you want to make sure that if something happens to both parents, that the children are, it's specified in your will where the children are going, who's going to raise them, who's going to be responsible for them. That's something that you want to choose. That's not something you want courts to choose after the fact. So there's a lot of different reasons why you need to have a will, and we're going to talk more about that with our guest, Marcus Otugello, in a little while. Another kind of topic of the hour has to do with scams, and we talk about scams all the time, and of course the seniors are the most vulnerable population, but this time of year, right around the holidays, scams kind of go into crazy mode. Holiday scams are huge, so we see now, at least I know I do, I go to the mall to do some shopping, there's nobody there because everybody's shopping online. And to be honest, I've shopped mostly online myself, but people are not in the stores. So our seniors also, they're getting more able to shop online, on iPads, on iPhones, and they're losing billions of dollars each year to scammers. Scammers ramp up their efforts to steal money and personal information during the holidays. So you need to make sure that your elderly loved ones are, on top of this, and they're not using debit cards online, that they're not giving any of their personal information to a vendor online, making sure that these websites that they're using are not suspicious. Deals and offers that look too good to be true probably are. So it's really important to make sure that we're just educating our seniors and really everybody that, you have to be careful with these online shopping and make sure that you're using protected websites and the like. Also during this time of year, we have charity scams. So, people, this is the season of giving. People like to give. They like to make donations. And again, the scammers are taking advantage of older adults and soliciting donations, whether it's by phone, by email, on social media, and even the old door-to-door. If you don't know who's at the door, you don't answer the door. And that's, something we have to make sure that we're telling our senior loved ones, our aging loved ones. They used to tell us that when we were kids, right? Never open the door for a stranger. So we need to remind them that is still the case. And the telephone calls, the emails asking for donations. We need to verify that these things are real. There are plenty of places and important and wonderful charities that you can donate to that we know are legitimate. And then just the regular scams that go on all year long, the lottery scams where people are told, oh, you have this big winning waiting for you, but you need to pay us the tax or you need to pay us a fee first. Those often, those people prey on the elderly as well. The grandparent scam where somebody calls and says, to grandma or grandpa that they're in jail or they're in trouble away on vacation and they need money. This one's interesting. I was at my parents' house and my dad got the call, and my dad is Greek and all his grandchildren call him Papu. So when this individual called and said, Grandpa, I'm in trouble, my father knew right away that this wasn't his grandchild. So he was, luckily, he kind of picked up on that quickly and was able to just hang up the phone. So, sometimes playing on the fears of the elderly, they get nervous right away. They don't really think about or concentrate on what's actually being said to them. So just really important to stress to people that they need to just calm down, take a step back, listen to what's going on. And finally, to be aware of these romance scams, which just blows my mind that, again, we're preying on the elderly. They're lonely maybe, they're by themselves most of the time, and they meet people online or by telephone, and they form relationships and they start trusting each other, and they really begin to believe that the individual is in love with them, and maybe wants to come visit the U.S., meet them, and they ask for money to be able to do that. Very, very common. It's happening more and more often. So these are just kinds of things to watch out for and to advise our seniors about. And really this time of year is a great time to kind of check out what's going on with your aging loved ones. Perhaps you don't see them all the time, but during the holidays you do. And if you're visiting with them, it's always good to kind of check their unopened mail or their mail period and see if there are things coming from organizations that maybe don't look legitimate. And if that's the case, maybe they've already been taken by one of these organizations. In addition, you will maybe want to check their search history on their internet browser if possible. Just kind of get the lay of the land and see what's going on. It's a great time of year to check in. So those are kind of two major stories going on right now that are really important. And now I'd like to bring Marcus Otugello onto the conversation. Mr. Otugello concentrates his practice in the areas of estate and asset protection planning here at Genser, Cona Elder Law. He also handles trust and estate administration, probate, tax planning, business succession planning, and estate litigation. Marcus, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me.
Marcus, I wanted to talk a little bit about estate administration because of this whole Prince thing that came up and what we were talking about earlier on in the show. Could you just kind of give people a brief overview of what they need to do when their loved one passes away? What do they need to do right away?
Well, there's a couple of things that they would want to do right away. First is to notify Social Security. So if they were a senior and they were receiving Social Security benefits, the funeral director is going to notify Social Security, but sometimes that takes some time. So it's usually a good idea to give them a call directly and advise them of the loved one's passing so that if they need to stop a payment or take back a payment, they can do so. Social Security payments, as you know, are paid for the month prior. So in December, you receive a payment for November, and you have to survive a whole month to receive the benefit. So depending on the timing of someone's passing and how long it takes to get notified, there might be an extra payment that needs to be put back. So it's usually easier to notify so that that can get cleared up as soon as possible. And also for a surviving spouse, to get the process going to claim the small death benefit, as well as an increase in that spouse's own Social Security to claim, especially if they're really dependent on that income source, to make sure that they can get what they're entitled to, an increase from their spouse's passing, and other sources of income like pensions. To make sure that the pension company is notified. Some of them, are paid in advance instead of behind. So it's important to make sure that any extra payments have time to be stopped or put back, and any adjustments, again, for a spouse might be entitled to a continuation of that pension. And for a lot of seniors, they're really dependent on that constant source of income. So getting on top of that can be really important, something that's right away. And also,
I'm sorry, I just need you to clarify one thing for people who might be listening to this and not believing what they're hearing. If somebody gets a Social Security payment on the 1st or the 2nd of the month of November and they pass away November 28th, that money doesn't stay in the account.
Well, if they got the payment on November 2nd or 3rd, it's probably for October, so they get to keep it.
Oh, so if let's say they passed away October 28th, but that payment comes in on November 1st or 2nd because Social Security doesn't know they passed.
Right. Sometimes they would generally need to take that back because they didn't make it the whole month.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
Sure. And then, again, relating to the funeral home, make sure when you get enough death certificates to take care of things as far as financial institutions, and notifying any credit card companies that your loved one has passed away to ensure that there's no fraud, so they can cancel the cards, and any kind of credit card that their name was on. It's just a really good idea to contact the company and let them know they passed away, so that no one tries to undertake fraudulent transfers. So those are the primary things that people need to do right away. There's a number of other things they could do over time.
Okay, that's great. That's really good advice, because I know, and you could probably speak to this even more than I can, but I know as elder law and estate planning attorneys, we do get phone calls. We have kind of two different types of families. The ones that call us the day somebody passes away, and the ones who call us a month later to let us know, mom or dad passed away a month ago. And so we don't get to kind of give them this advice to let them know what to do right away. So this is important information to have. We talked a little bit earlier about the importance of having a last will and testament, and we talked about what's going on with Prince's sister at the moment. And I also had given some quick stories about people who have passed away without a will and what's happened. Anything you wanna throw in there? Any other catastrophes you've experienced or witnessed in your career?
Yes. One of the benefits, like you said before, about doing a will is being able to choose who's in charge of your estate and not relying on, whichever of your heirs steps forward, or whoever, maybe the court appoints a third party who's not really involved. And there are cases, they're rare, but they happen, where these third-party administrators have stolen from estates or sold something for less than market value or to a buddy of theirs. And there's some risk there that, the assets can be depleted and not be properly administered. Or just, the wrong, or the people you don't want receiving your assets. I mean, if you don't have a will, it goes to the default statute, and maybe you have relatives, your closest relatives are not who you'd want to leave your assets to, and you prefer other ones or charities. It's really important to make sure that you get to choose who receives your inheritance.
So real quick, what happens if you pass away without a will? I had mentioned earlier that first your assets go to your parents, but I stopped there. What happens if you're married and you have kids and you pass away without a will?
If you're married and have children, your spouse gets $50,000 plus half the remainder, and the other half is distributed to your children equally. I mean, for most people, that's not really what they want. They want all of their assets to go to their spouse first. So even for married couples, they think, they might not need a will. They definitely need one.
Okay. All right. So that's some good information. Marcus, thank you so much for joining us today. Really, really appreciate the info. Again, you can visit us at genserlaw.com. You can check out some information on our website. You can reach out to me personally if you have some questions at melissa@genserlaw.com. And you can also check us out on social media. We have a great social media page chock full of information. And now also we're going to, before we sign off, of course, hear from our managing partner, Jennifer Cona.
Genetic testing and now even blood tests are being developed to allow for the early detection of Alzheimer's disease. Some pros may be that it could allow for earlier diagnosis, possibly more treatment options, or more aggressive treatment perhaps. But would you really live your life differently if you knew you had the gene? Maybe you'd get your affairs in order. That's a big plus. Maybe you'd cross things off your bucket list. But what about this? Now that this information is in your medical records, you may not be able to get life insurance. You definitely would not be able to get long-term care insurance. And if our health coverage laws in the U.S. were to change, this pre-existing condition would knock you right out of the box from even regular health insurance benefits eligibility. Now that's something to think about. I'm a big believer that knowledge is power, but sometimes you're just better off not knowing. This is Jennifer Cona signing off.
Thank you again for joining us on this episode of Elder Law Matters. I want to thank my guest, Marcus Otugello from Genser Cona Elder Law. And please remember to check out our website at genserlaw.com and check us out on social media. We have a great social media page, Facebook page that is chock full of information. Also, if you have any questions you want to ask me directly, you can email me at melissa@genserlaw.com. Look forward to speaking with you all again soon.
Thank you for listening to Elder Law Matters, the only show that talks about elder law and estate planning. For more information, check us out at genserlaw.com.